Welcome to Marginal Support, where support is anything but marginal. I am your host, Andre Lindy, and today I have Megan with me. Megan, thank you for joining. Can you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Meghan Gallagher. I am a support operations consultant under my own brand. And yeah, I've been working in support for as long as I can remember, like all of us. And I've been in support operations for the past 5 years. And today I'm really excited to talk about some things I'm particularly passionate about. So, like taxonomy. Yeah.
I think that's good. It's it's one of those things that people probably do a lot, but they don't really ever think about. So,
Mhm.
what do you say to people when you start talking about it? The people go, "Oh, actually, I know what that is."
Yeah, I think like one of when we think about tags, we're thinking about quantitative data for tickets, right? Like this is just the high level overview. And not, one of like the biggest symptoms is that, let's say you have tags. We all tag, like, it's just people tag tickets and that's normal. But of course, when you have to start asking questions like, oh, let's say product is like, hey, what are people saying about this feature? And then you're just like, I can tell you X amount of people wrote about it, but I can't give you any more context on that. And so that's kind of like the number one symptom of people are like, maybe I need to revisit my taxonomy. Yeah.
I think one of the areas that I've seen tags kind of go awry is when there's no uniformity. You'll have one tag that's all uppercase, one that's mixed case, one that's all lowercase, and there's no real strategy there. So you basically have all these tags, but no uniformity.
Yeah.
How do you go about companies that are kind of in this situation?
Well, I think you have to look at all of the tags created and kind of like one, I always like looking at volume, like and I think like overall when it comes to structure, I there needs to be some sort of like template or some sort of documentation saying how to create a tag or making sure that one person is actually approving them or multiple people to prevent bottlenecks. But I find that a lot of like organizations that are creating tags that are just, it's like a spaghetti monster, it's because people are just creating tags on the fly. There's no like approval system whatsoever, and then once it's created, it's probably not really monitored at all. People forget about it, and so that's what the data kind of, that's the first step that I would do, is looking at tag data to like see like, this tag was created like 6 months ago and there was one ticket like attached to it. It's probably too niche of a tag. And like, that's why a lot of people are getting in this mentality being like, there are no tags that match this type of conversation and they just create one. But who's to say that ticket doesn't need a tag if it's not, if it's so niche, you know what I mean?
I agree. I mean, I think one of the problems with tags sometimes is people try to get hyper focused,
Yeah.
and you're just like, do I seriously need a tag for this edge case? Maybe not. What is your advice on when you're trying to think of your taxonomy? Like, what is a strategy? Even like before you put any tags in place, what do you need to think about?
Yeah. Well, I always say, like, first of all, who is benefiting from these tags? Who are the people that are asking the questions that ultimately you have to go into your tags and look at that data? Most of the time it's product. Maybe leadership wants to know like about churn and like, hey, what are canceled people saying before they cancel, things like that. Like we have all these other stakeholders, but obviously and within our support team, we need to talk to them because like if for example if people are building these voice of customer reports or like newsletters, like ultimately we have to understand who our reader is and what kind of insights they're looking to take. So that's the first tip. And then as far as like actually creating a structured ticket taxonomy, I always say do multi-tier. The way that I interpret that is like, okay, we need to understand why someone is writing in, what they're writing in about, and then maybe some like additional context that pertains to the specific organization. Like if I know Help Scout even did like a demo on this like a while back ago. They use trials. Maybe we can add a in trial tag or not in trial tag to see like what people are asking it about, or if it's the first 30 days. And those are kind of like specialty tags that I would consider. But yeah, those are kind of like the twofold thing that I would do when creating a new taxonomy.
So, one of the ways that I used tags in the past was when there was an incident that we would tell everyone every ticket that comes in that's related to this incident, tag it with this specific incident tag. So we go incident dash 123. And we got very
Yeah.
strict about it. We said there needs to be the word incident, a space, and then the incident number.
Yeah.
It can't be all crammed together.
No.
So this is one place that people got very strict. And then when we went back and started to look at how many tickets were affected, we could then start to add up ARR to see the total impact on that. But that
Yeah.
is more on a incident level. Where do you think? What are your thoughts on tags at both the account level and then the ticket level? Because they serve two different purposes there.
Yeah, and I think this is where kind of like AI can really come into play with adding, because like I know every help desk calls it differently, like tags, Zendesk and like HubSpot, they have you can use forms and like fill this information out. But then obviously with the account information, you should be able to pull that through, hopefully internal, like you have an internal tool set up or you're connected with Stripe and you're able to actually like add some of these more custom fields and forms. It really depends on the help desk that you're using, but obviously like there's some that come to mind such as front, plane, pylon. They're really like advanced when it comes to building taxonomies where that the agent doesn't need to manually tag all of this information like account information and you're focusing primarily on the ticket. Does that
And you're
make
saying that
sense?
it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
basically, what I'm hearing you say is that some of the more legacy players are a little more user intensive in terms of they have to do this tag management, whereas the platforms that have come out recently that are more focused on B2B support and more
yeah,
support focused are taking the stress off the people.
yeah, absolutely. And I think like even if it's like a quote unquote legacy help desk, you can still use outside tools to classify these tickets as long as you're in like prompting them correctly, and making sure like that they're not creating tags. We'll talk about it. I'm fully against AI creating tags. Like I think it's a disaster. But the fact that we can use AI as long as we tell them what information we're looking for, and they can do this on the back end using tools like N88 or Claude, kind of, yeah.
So I want you to think up a scenario and tell me how using AI and tags could go wrong really fast.
I have so there's there the first thing is when it creates tags. It is it creates every tag that you could possibly think of. Like I think I saw somebody who's like creating this tool and it was like or a bot or you connected or whatever and it literally spits out like 400 tags and you're just like even if you were to prompt it, hey, let's keep it down to like 40 or 50, it's still like a lot of these tags are like literally sentences with just underscores, like, that, what a disaster. And it's kind of like these really niche tags that you can just tell by looking at it, this will be used once and never again. Like, and I think that while like if you are prompting to help assist like looking at tags, you need to, obviously we all know that AI, you need to provide as much context as possible. And like I mentioned before, if you talk to stakeholders, like include that information. But I have seen when you give AI carte blanche to create tags, it's terrible. It's really bad. And then on the other side of tagging, once that's the good part is like the fact that tagging is very manual. It takes a minute ideally you want it to take 1 minute for an agent to tag is if your taxonomy is good. If your taxonomy is bad, it could take a few minutes, and that's not okay. But with AI, like, it's just when you actually give it a legit taxonomy, it can do wonders, and our agents don't have to focus on making sure that the category or the taxonomy is right. But of course, if you feed it a bad taxonomy, your data is not going to look good, even if AI is tagging it. You know what I mean?
So I mean, it's a shocker that you're saying garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you put bad information in and you expect something good to come out. It is not going to happen 100% of the time, pretty much. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
where have you seen AI actually do really well in relation to tags? Not maybe creating the tags, but possibly in using them or reporting them. Where have you seen the strengths of AI with tags?
I think especially, like I said, when you're trying to set up a multi-tier ticket taxonomy, the why, the what, and then maybe an additional, like one of my go-to examples, for example, is support is typically the gatekeeper behind refunds and cancellations in general. It's probably the most common ticket that we see are billing stuff. And that's where, like, for example, let's say we have somebody comes in, they're asking for a refund that you can all, because that you can classify as like the first tier, like it needs human support. I like using the wording problem because that means like we definitely have to jump in. And then the second example would be billing, refund. Now the third tier could be whether or not that refund was approved or not. And that's where, like, when the conversation is going, you have to keep adjusting the taxonomy, and that's where I've seen AI really do wonders, making sure that the tags are up to date and as the conversation is flowing. And so that's where, like I said, if you have a solid structure and a taxonomy that you're happy with, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if it's getting the insights that you need, AI does a great job at actually applying those. And you see the data from that. Like, I think it's always with taxonomy and using AI, always gut check everything, and you're allowed to second guess, but tagging is not a perfect science either. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be close to. Like, as long as 90% of the conversations are being tagged correctly, we're good. Yeah.
One area that I've seen tags, and most of my experience comes on the B2B side,
Yeah.
was when I was running reports for product. And it was a very manual process where you had to maybe take a quarter's worth of tickets. Then you had
Yeah.
to, this was into this, you had to add in all these filters. You had to make sure everything was looking right.
Yeah.
And still the data wasn't telling a complete story. Either the tags
Yeah.
weren't right or the way the tickets were organized. Where do you see AI improving the process and when support leaders want to start to tell a story to product in terms of either product misuse, product underuse, or people just not liking a part of the product?
Yeah. I think that, for example, some of my favorite, like, high tier whys people are writing in are, you can use a different nomenclature. I use how to most of the time. That's kind of like a question. Maybe there's a help center article relevant. It's more tier one kind of conversations with people asking questions on how to use a specific feature. And then you have problem, which I mentioned before, which typically requires human support to step in and do something. Then we have, bug and feature request. So a lot of these you're using with every single conversation. Obviously, the second part, let's use Notion as an example. Databases are probably the most complicated feature out of all of Notion, the one that people struggle with the most. But that's a big feature when you think about it. And so use the secondary tag as like account underscore, you know, like database underscore filters or something minimalist like that. And so now, even with those two, what we can see, especially for product, is like, okay, let's pull up this feature and see how many requests are coming in, if it's a usability, if it's actually a problem, like a pain point in somebody's experience, or if there are a lot of bugs related to this or feature requests. And that gives product a much better understanding of how we can apply this. And I sometimes even like to bring in outside tooling similar to like Amplitude or Full Story, like those are click analytics, and try to get an even bigger picture because, for us in support, people say that only 10% of users write in, but maybe they're experiencing that problem and they're just silently not getting. That's where kind of like the outside tool helps when you picture it in a funnel and you see the drop off. That's where it's like, okay, that even brings in more evidence and to try to help to move the needle. Because ultimately, especially with product teams, what we're trying to do is move the needle and be like, let's let's talk about this. Let's get the conversation going on this. So yeah.
That's a very interesting perspective. Based on what I'm hearing you say, is that you're going to use all the tags you have in your system, but then you're going to use some other tools that can collect data even before the person was coming to support. So then you can kind of see the before and after picture, and that's going to give everyone
Yeah.
just a better idea of what people are experiencing in the product.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like a lot of people don't write. I've been think about like I've been a very happy user of 1Password for a very long time. I've never written into their support and like maybe there's like a few like finicky stuff with it, but it doesn't prompt me to make a ticket because one, two, I'm a support person. I don't like creating volume, but I'm saying like this is just an example of like people that might not write in, and so you have to account for the other user base that might be experiencing that problem, but it's easier for them to cancel than maybe have to write in support. So it is better to get that a lot. Like tags are the foundation of everything. Like connecting to metrics, like, and connecting to these other resources. That's why it's like so important to me and why we have to focus on that.
I want to get your thoughts on the way we use tags, not within one system, but then when we transfer a ticket. And the thought process I've seen this happen is support has a ticket that lives in Zendesk, it gets escalated, and then it goes to Jira. What
Oh
is a
yeah.
good way where we are trying to keep the same taxonomy? I can't say that word at all. I'm horrible at saying that
It's
word.
okay. It's
Uh,
okay. Just tags. Just tags.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
tags, where we're moving our tags basically from two systems, and it's two different audiences, and they could
Yeah.
have two
Yeah.
different meanings.
Yeah. I don't use tags in Jira, for example, but let's use this example. So like what I told before, like the primary tag, that would be bug. And then we would focus more on actually what feature or what aspect of the platform it's affecting. And that way you get a better picture of, what's going on. Now, I know that like Zendesk and a lot of other type of help desks like HubSpot even, you can connect with Jira using their integration. And that also allows you to kind of feed in more insights for that report. Like I like filtering out, hey, let's look at this issue type and in Jira and see. how many people churned after it, you know, just to show like the impact that bug has had. But that's also using systems outside, like in integration. Now, in the past, I was on Help Scout and we were using linear. There's no direct integration. So we would, sorry, oh, excuse me. So we would have to create tags for every linear issue. Of course, it killed me because our tag list grew and it wasn't pretty anymore. But at the same time, they all served a purpose, and that was the only way for us to actually follow up and connect the two tools. So honestly, like I think it's really important to have an integration, but if you don't, you can still result to tags for that.
Makes a lot of sense. The only way I saw it done well when I was using the two products was when we were doing tags in Jira, and it was a let's say a bug ticket. The tags we
Yeah,
would use there would be the names of the companies that were affected by that bug, and
interesting.
so then when engineering looked at the ticket, if they saw, let's say, 20 tags, that was telling them that 20 companies were impacted by this bug. So it gave them instant insight into basically how relevant this bug was. So it took some thinking. We realized we couldn't use the same tag setup we use in support that
Uh,
we use with engineering piece. Engineering would be like, what is this crap? I don't know what you guys are talking about here.
no, yeah, yeah. There has been like, because like for example, some HubSpot's fresh in my mind because that's the tool that I was like last on. That integration is pretty powerful because it has a ticket count. So anytime that you attach a ticket, it will count. And also we have like a formula that pulls up of the amount of end users that are impacted by this bug, and we prioritize it based off of that. There's a lot you can do with like direct integrations with that. That's where like tags sometimes you outgrow that. But one scenario that I have seen tags work outside of support with another department is actually user research. There, some user research uses tools like Dovetail's probably my favorite, where let's say they record a user interview and we literally use the same ticket taxonomy as user research so that it's completely cohesive. Because user research are very similar to support people. They're down to getting to the psychology, the root of the problem, and like that is where I've seen tags like really go well together because it's a very important part of their work.
So let's say that we're someone's coming into a company and the
Mm.
tag system is a mess. What are you going to tell to the higher ups or even the people that are working it to get buy-in to say we're scrapping everything and we're recreating
I
this?
did exactly that. That's how I started my obsession. I was, I was, it was when I was being onboarded at Whereby, when I was going through the onboarding thing and I saw the tag directory. And as a new person, you're coming in with a fresh set of eyes and tagging is one of those things where as a new person, or really any kind of SOP, when you think about it, like it's important to provide feedback early on because it is important for new people to adopt tags very quickly. You shouldn't like maybe the first week you can have the tag directory on the other side of your screen, but after that you should be going like this. But the problem is that a lot of people, like the person that was presenting the tags to me, they've been there for a few years and they didn't, they're already used to the system. It's fine. And I know that they were like wanting to get some feedback and like let's scrap it and let's just start fresh. I think when it comes to leadership, the biggest, like I said in the beginning, like the biggest symptom is let's say leadership asks a question and you don't have the answer to that. That's when that's when you're like, okay, we need to redo our ticket tags. because they don't make sense. And most of the time, um, especially if you are full time on a team, like they just let you go with it. Leadership, they're like, I don't know anything about this, but I trust you. When we're in support, like it's kind of like, okay, we're gonna do this, and then we did it. Here are the results, and that's where tags come into play. But I think for me as a consultant, the buy-in is a little bit high is a little bit harder because I don't think a lot of people are thinking about their tags making that can make a difference. And so it is harder to sell that. Yeah.
So when you come in as a consultant, then you're that outside set of eyes, and at first they're
Yeah.
like, "What are you doing here?" But then people say, "Oh, but we brought this person in because we have this tagging issue." So, what are people's general reaction when you first step in, and then when you step out?
I've done three ticket taxonomies over again in other previous companies. Um, a lot of people are hesitant. And like I always do like proper research. I sit in with teams, I ask the right questions, and I put together kind of like a playbook of how they should structure their ticket taxonomy. Whether people want to apply it, they can apply it or not. But most of the time, like out of the ticket taxonomies that I've built, there have been really great results because you can see that with the VOC reports. You can see that with making educated decisions about how we can better improve our support. Because, like I said before, metrics even relate to tags as well. Like, let's say you notice, one, the replies to resolve a ticket has gone up. Okay, let's figure out why. And the only way to figure out why is to look at your tags. Is there a specific maybe feature that there's a knowledge gap that product can talk about this? Or maybe it's just too complicated of a feature for even the user to understand. Or maybe there needs to be more training into place if it's troubleshooting stuff. That's why like everything relates to tags. Yeah.
So one example I can think of where when I was working at a company and the tags completely changed was product came to our team and said, "We have no idea what your team is doing when they're selecting, when they're going and they're basically selecting all the categories in your tickets." And
Mm,
and and so what was happening is that the way the Zendesk integration worked is that once you pick the category and subcategory, that auto create tags on its own. And so that
interesting.
was and so what we did then was product, I think it was two product managers sat down with us and we actually went through and we redid
I love that.
uh, our entire basically hierarchy in terms of the main category
Yeah.
and then the subcategories. And the goal here
Yeah.
was that product was trying to look at our information, but it made no sense to them.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on when product is actively trying to work with support to come together for a shared language?
Oh my God. I absolutely love that. That is, you've hit the gold mine. That never happens. Like, because I think product and support, like, that is one of the most important relationships. Because when you think about it as a bigger picture thing, support wants to be heard. We are hearing everything that are sadly, most of it is bad stuff. Like, rarely that people reach out for compliments, or maybe they do. But, anyways, so it's important to have such a good relationship with product. And the fact that product is actually wanting to independently look at reports and knowing what tag to pull, absolute gold, because that's the end goal, right? Because I think for us, like a lot of us are at that point where even after we redo our ticket taxonomy, let's say we send out these voice of customer reports on a quarterly or monthly basis. um but ultimately we want people to self-serve. Like that's the end goal, is that people should be able to self-serve our support information. But of course, like it's making sure that it's a team effort and not just product saying we should do this way because it has to work for both teams.
So now that you bring up voice of customer, I've heard you talk about it a couple times. This
Yeah,
is something that a lot of people I don't think truly understand, and it is
yeah.
how do our tags reflect how we go about shaping our voice to the customer reports?
I mean, really, like voice of customer is just a fancy way of saying how can we communicate what is relevant to the rest of the company? Okay. It's you don't maybe you can use a separate tool. I've used Notion, like you can even use an email. That can still be a voice of customer. So focusing less on how you deliver that format and what it's about. And typically what I used to do is like at Whereby I did our voice of customer reports on a quarterly basis right before we were to revisit our company goals. And the reason why I did that is because leadership had expressed to me that they wanted relevant information in order to decide what our company's OKRs and goals are for that based off of the previous quarter. And so I would literally deliver that. Like I would deliver, data like let's say for example, every SaaS company loves like how do we prevent churn like and or seeing churn volume and things like that. So naturally I would pull reports using tags being like this was a huge pain point which could potentially result in this amount of churn, or connecting our churn survey results and saying like this was the feature people said that they canceled mainly because of bugs. Okay, let's kind of take a deeper dive into the bugs and seeing what happened there. And so it's about delivering information that people want to read and trying to do the entire story. So like that really changes a lot. And yeah, like I said, I think a lot of people like think voice of customer is just you need a fancy tool and you need like a proper programming. As long like to get the ball running, you just have to communicate things that people want to hear about the customer. And tags is obviously fundamental for showing that quantitative side. But of course, like I always like putting snippets of actual like tickets, like quotes from customers to really round out the entire report.
And I'm guessing then when you're looking for some of those tickets, you could probably go searching for certain tags maybe to help start to
Yeah,
shape your narrative.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So as we start to wrap this up, I want to ask you a question about AI. We've touched on it here and there, but I want you to
Yeah.
make the case for the good use of AI for tags and the bad use. You've already touched on the bad use a little, but let's just wrap it all together. Good use and then bad use.
Get good use is having AI actually apply tags to conversations as long as you feed it the taxonomy, a good taxonomy. Bad, do not have AI create your tags. Like you can if you can ask for information, don't I've seen a lot of people do this. Here's all of our ticket data. Can you please tell, like, here, I'm sending you literally thousands of tickets. Can you please come up with a ticket taxonomy? No, no. Even if you tell Claude to be like, can you please act as a ticket taxonomy specialist? Like, it will not come up with good tags. So please don't. That is my PSA. Yeah.
Review review it, but don't have it build it. That's a good.
Yeah, it's okay to ask to like gut check, but I would not have it build from scratch. Like it's definitely it's very rewarding building this stuff manually. Like I take a lot of pride and joy in doing it. Yeah.
Well, great. This was a very good conversation about tags. I hope when others watch it, they gain a lot of knowledge from it, and then they learn basically how to do proper tagging.
I hope
So
so. Yeah, I've left a lot of like my secret sauce in here, so I really.
so as we wrap up, I always ask people one question at the end,
Mhm.
and it's a phrase that I created, and I want to get what it means to you. So what I
Yeah.
say is, support isn't a job; it's a mindset. What does that mean to you?
I mean, support, like, I personally love uplifting people and, like, in the queues, but also outside of the queues. And I think that our users are so important to us. And that's why, like, I see this gold mine of information just sitting there, and that's why I really love being able to tell their stories beyond the cues to actually make an impact. And that for me is support. It's what you feel internally. It's not, yeah, it's not what you do. But it's
That's
also what we
great.
do. But yeah, it's a
Yeah,
pleasure. It's a pleasure though.
it's who we are. That's why I think
Yeah.
we are support people inside of work and outside of work, and
Oh,
sometimes
absolutely.
it might annoy people. Sometimes they're like, "Stop working." I'm like, "It's just the way my brain works. I can't stop this."
I'm
So
always be supported. Like my friends even they're like, "Why are you so disgustingly nice to people?" I'm like, "It's just who I am. It's part of my it's part of my my profession and my personality. Like this is it." Yeah. Yeah.
well, Megan, it was an absolute joy speaking with you and learning more about tags. I hope we can talk again in the future.
Yeah, again. Thank you so much, Andre.
Bye.